I'm sorry, Tim. I'll never do that again.
It's actually Mike. Tim was the other show.
When Last Man Standing first aired in 2011, no one could have predicted the journey it would take. It wasn't just another family sitcom. In many ways, it marked a return to a certain kind of television that had become less common. Shows that blended humor with real-life debates and that weren't afraid to touch on politics, culture, and generational shifts. For many families, it became a Friday night tradition. It wasn't just about the jokes, it was about the conversations it sparked.
In this world, it's not like it was at Home Improvement. Home Improvement was, I believe, at our top, we're 24 million viewers on a Tuesday night.
Yeah.
At the center of it all was Tim Allen, who played the lead role of Mike Baxter. For audiences who grew up watching Home Improvement, seeing Allen back on a sitcom felt both familiar and fresh. But getting him back on television wasn't a straightforward process. After the success of Home Improvement in the 1990s, Allen had largely stepped back from TV. Offers continued to come his way, including a major one from CBS that reportedly would have paid him up to $1 million per episode. Still, he turned them down. According to interviews at the time, he didn't want to play a character that felt like a rehash of what he'd already done. He was looking for something new, something with a little more edge and control over the creative direction. That's when Jack Burdett, the creator of Last Man Standing, approached him with a different kind of pitch. Burdett imagined Mike Baxter as someone who could be seen as a more grown-up version of Allen's iconic toolman persona, but with sharper political commentary and a modern-day twist. Baxter was a marketing executive at a sporting goods company called Outdoor Man, and the show focused on his life at work and home, especially his relationship with his wife and 3 daughters. Allen reportedly said no to the role 3 times. He was concerned that it might feel too similar to Home Improvement, and was wary of returning to network television without having a say in how things would run. Eventually, what changed his mind was the opportunity to be involved behind the scenes. Along with starring in the series, Allen signed on as an executive producer, which meant he would have input in creative decisions. That level of control was key, especially since the show planned to explore topics that could easily become divisive. ABC had its own ambitions for the show. Executives hoped to create something in the spirit of classic sitcoms like All in the Family, where a strong-willed main character's beliefs would regularly be challenged by the people around him. Mike Baxter, as written, was a conservative man navigating a household of more liberal-minded women. It wasn't subtle, but that was part of the point. The humor came not just from day-to-day situations, but from the ideological clashes that unfolded around the dinner table. When the show premiered in October 2011, the response was immediate. Over 13 million people tuned into the first episode, making it ABC's most-watched comedy debut since Modern Family in 2009. For a show airing on a Friday night, a slot traditionally considered a difficult one for attracting big audiences, this was a significant achievement. It proved that there was still a large audience for traditional sitcom formats, especially when they offered something a little different from the usual fare. As the first season progressed, Last Man Standing continued to perform well. It consistently held strong ratings and became particularly popular with viewers aged 18 to 49, a key demographic for advertisers. By the end of the season, it had firmly established itself as one of ABC's top performers. The success continued over the next 5 seasons. Each year, the show drew millions of viewers and managed to maintain a loyal following. It wasn't necessarily a critical darling. Some critics took issue with the political overtones or saw it as playing it safe. But for many households, it was reliable entertainment that managed to feel both familiar and timely. The family dynamic, with Allen's character trying to understand his daughters while holding on to his own worldview, resonated with a lot of people. The show also had a unique tone. While it included the standard elements of a multi-camera sitcom, laugh track, domestic setting, recurring gags, it wasn't afraid to let its characters disagree in meaningful ways. Episodes often featured Mike posting video blogs for the Outdoor Man website, using these segments to share his views on everything from modern parenting to political correctness. These monologues gave the show a chance to lean into cultural commentary, while the responses from his family kept it balanced. Interestingly, these moments reflected what was happening in real life as well. Allen himself has often spoken about the challenges of being an outspoken conservative in the entertainment industry. In interviews, he mentioned feeling like Hollywood was not always welcoming to alternative viewpoints, and that Last Man Standing gave him a rare platform to explore these ideas through comedy. However, he also made it clear that the show wasn't meant to push a single agenda. It was supposed to be a conversation, and that was what made it work. By the time the show reached its sixth season in 2016 to 2017, it was averaging over 8 million viewers per episode, an impressive number for any sitcom, especially one airing on Friday nights. It was consistently outperforming other shows in its time slot and bringing in solid advertising revenue. That's why it came as such a shock when, in May 2017, ABC suddenly announced that it would not be renewing Last Man Standing for a seventh season. The news caught both fans and the cast off guard. There had been no sign of trouble. In fact, some reports indicated that the writing staff had already started planning for the next season. The decision to cancel the show felt abrupt, and it didn't take long before theories started circulating about why it had happened. One theory was that the cancellation had less to do with ratings and more to do with internal politics at the network. Around the same time, ABC was undergoing a shift in programming strategy, moving away from comedies on Friday nights and towards more genre-based shows like fantasy and sci-fi. ABC's then-president, Channing Dungey, stated that the decision wasn't politically motivated, but some fans weren't convinced, especially after Tim Allen made a controversial appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he compared being a conservative in Hollywood to living in 1930s Germany. While Allen later clarified his comments, the timing led many to wonder if the show's cancellation had more to do with behind-the-scenes discomfort than network logistics. Regardless of the reason, the show's initial run on ABC ended there, but its early years had already cemented it as one of the most successful family comedies of the decade. It combined traditional sitcom charm with a willingness to take risks, which helped it stand out in a crowded field. One of the first major shifts happened with the character of Kristen Baxter, Mike's eldest daughter. In the first season, Kristen was played by Alexandra Krosny. Her version of Kristen was a young single mother trying to find her footing while raising her son Boyd with the support of her parents. She worked as a waitress and often clashed with her father's views, but there was always warmth behind their banter. Krosny's performance was praised for feeling grounded and authentic. She brought a mix of confidence and vulnerability to the role, making Kristen one of the show's most relatable characters in its early run. So when ABC announced that Krosny would not be returning for the second season, fans were confused. The official reason given at the time was creative differences, a vague explanation that didn't shed much light on the situation. But as the show continued, it became clear that the decision to recast Kristen had to do with broader changes in direction. The show's producers wanted to take Kristen's character in a slightly older, more mature direction. Instead of being a young woman still figuring things out, they envisioned Kristen as someone with more life experience, someone who could more confidently stand up to Mike Baxter's worldviews and challenge him in deeper conversations. To fit this vision, the role was recast with actress Amanda Fuller. Fuller was older than Krosny and brought a different energy to the character. From season 2 onwards, Kristen was portrayed as a more self-assured mother, with a stable job and stronger opinions. Her dynamic with Mike shifted as well, becoming more ideological and less focused on her struggles as a single parent. There was also a visual factor involved in the decision. Alexandra Krosny, despite playing the oldest sister, was actually younger than Molly Ephraim, who played the middle daughter, Mandy. This made the sibling relationships appear a bit off to the creative team. By casting Amanda Fuller, who was older than both Krosny and Ephraim, the visual hierarchy of the family made more sense on screen. Fans had mixed reactions to the change. Some missed the original Kristen's lighter tone, while others appreciated the more serious direction Fuller brought to the role. Over time, most viewers adjusted, and Kristen continued to be a central figure in the show. But Kristen wasn't the only character to see changes early on. Another role that underwent a significant transformation was that of Ryan Vogelson, the father of Kristen's son, Boyd. Ryan first appeared in season 1, briefly portrayed by pop singer Nick Jonas. At the time, Jonas was just 19 years old, and his appearance was mostly a stunt casting move, designed to bring attention to the Christmas episode in which his character returns after abandoning Kristen and their child. In that episode, Ryan is depicted as immature and clueless, a teenage runaway who had left his responsibilities behind. Although his role was small, Jonas's casting generated buzz, and the character of Ryan remained in the background of the show's story. But when Season 2 rolled around, the new showrunner, Tim Doyle, saw potential to do more with the character. Doyle wanted Ryan to evolve beyond the deadbeat dad label. He thought there was an opportunity to give Mike Baxter a proper ideological foil, someone close to the family who could challenge Mike's conservative worldview in a more consistent and thoughtful way. To support this direction, the role of Ryan was recast. Jonas didn't return, and instead, the part went to actor Jordan Masterson, who brought a very different energy to the role. Masterson was known for his work on the show Greek, and his version of Ryan was older, more articulate, and clearly politically aware. He still had a free-spirited attitude, but he now had strong opinions about social justice, parenting, and business. This reimagining turned Ryan into a regular character who wasn't just part of the family tree. He was now a meaningful part of the show's ideological balance. With this new version of Ryan, the show started to dig deeper into social and political themes. Ryan and Mike often clashed over everything from gun rights to environmentalism to the role of government. While their conversations were framed with humor, the intention was to show two very different men trying to coexist in the same extended family. This added depth to the show's storytelling and gave the writers more room to explore real-world issues from multiple angles. Over time, Ryan's character developed even further. He went from struggling to find work to running his own cannabis business, a plotline that both amused and challenged Mike's character. The irony of a left-leaning, anti-capitalist character becoming a successful entrepreneur wasn't lost on the writers, and it provided a lot of comedic material. It also showed the show's willingness to let characters grow in unexpected ways. Not all cast changes were met with instant approval from fans, but in the case of Ryan, many viewers came to appreciate the added complexity. The change allowed the show to step outside of typical sitcom comfort zones and address larger societal conversations while still maintaining its comedic tone. Still, not every character transition was so smooth. The frequent changes early in the series raised questions about the show's long-term stability. Some fans worried that these shifts would hurt continuity or make the show feel inconsistent. Others simply missed the original actors whose performances had helped define the first season. The producers, however, seemed to view these changes as necessary evolutions. The recasting of Kristen and Ryan was part of a broader effort to take the show in a direction that was less focused on typical family sitcom tropes and more centered around generational and ideological clashes. By retooling these characters, the writers had more flexibility in shaping long-running storylines and tackling new topics. Despite some early bumps, the show managed to keep its audience engaged. It's not easy for a sitcom to recast major roles and still maintain momentum. But Last Man Standing pulled it off by making sure the heart of the show, Mike Baxter and his dynamic with the people around him, remained consistent. Whether it was his daughters, their partners, or his colleagues at Outdoor Man, the interactions always reflected a mix of love, frustration, humor, and generational tension. There was no final farewell episode, no clear signal that the show was winding down, just an abrupt statement that it wouldn't return for a seventh season. Tim Allen, who starred as Mike Baxter and also served as an executive producer, expressed his surprise publicly. On social media, he said he was blindsided by the decision and thanked fans for their support. Other cast members shared similar feelings. Nancy Travis, who played Mike's wife Vanessa, posted an emotional message to viewers, and Hector Elizondo, who played Mike's boss Ed, hinted that there was more going on behind the scenes than the network had acknowledged. The timing of the cancellation added to the speculation. Just 2 months earlier, Tim Allen had appeared on Jimmy Kimmel Live, where he made a controversial comment comparing the experience of being a conservative in Hollywood to living in Nazi Germany in the 1930s. The statement was clearly intended as a joke, but it drew criticism and sparked debate online. Some people wondered whether Allen's political views, or at least the perception of them, had influenced ABC's decision to cancel the show. ABC's official explanation was that the decision wasn't political. The network's president at the time, Channing Dungey, said it was simply a programming shift. ABC wanted to move away from comedies on Friday nights and focus more on genre shows like fantasy, drama, and science fiction. She also noted that Last Man Standing was produced by 20th Century Fox Television, which meant ABC didn't own the show. That made it more expensive to license and potentially less profitable in the long run. Each episode reportedly cost ABC around $3 million, with a portion of that going to Tim Allen, whose salary was more than $200,000 per episode at the time. Still, many fans didn't buy the explanation. They felt that a show with such high ratings, and with a dedicated audience, deserved to stay on the air. The cancellation sparked one of the most vocal and passionate Save Our Show campaigns in recent TV history. Within 24 hours, an online petition to bring Last Man Standing back had gained over 400,000 signatures. Fans flooded Twitter with hashtags like #Save Last Man Standing and Bring Back Last Man Standing, calling out the network for what they believed was an unfair and politically motivated decision. The campaign didn't stop there. Some fans mailed toy tools to ABC headquarters, referencing Mike Baxter's handyman background as a symbolic gesture. Others paid for billboards in major cities like Los Angeles and New York, demanding the return of the show. Even politicians got involved. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker tweeted about the cancellation and questioned whether it had anything to do with the show's conservative-leaning content. The outpouring of support was loud and persistent, and it made an impact. Behind the scenes, Fox executives were already paying attention. At the time, Fox was looking for proven content that could help strengthen its comedy lineup. They saw how much attention ABC had received for reviving Roseanne, another sitcom with a political angle and a devoted following. It made sense that Last Man Standing, with its strong track record and built-in audience, could offer similar success. Initially, Fox tried to shop the show to other networks, including CMT and NBC. There were discussions and early negotiations, but none of those deals materialized. Eventually, Fox decided to bring the show in-house. It helped that 20th Century Fox Television, which produced Last Man Standing, was part of the same corporate family. This gave Fox the ability to manage production and licensing more efficiently. And in May 2018, just 1 year after the cancellation, Fox officially announced that it would be reviving the show. Getting the show back on air wasn't a simple process. The announcement came in May, and Fox wanted the show to premiere by September. That gave the team less than 4 months to write new scripts, rebuild the sets, and start filming. Since the original set had been taken down, everything had to be reconstructed from scratch. Filming resumed at the same studio, but under tight deadlines. Writers were given just over 15 weeks to complete the first batch of scripts, and production crews were filming as many as 3 episodes per week to stay on schedule. The revival also came with new costs. Each episode now cost around $1.1 million to produce, up from $800,000 before. Tim Allen's salary increased too, rising to around $235,000 per episode. To help offset the higher production costs, Fox sold streaming rights to Hulu and CMT for $1.5 million per episode. The production team also made efforts to be more efficient, such as filming on fewer locations and cutting back on travel expenses. These adjustments allowed the show to return without losing its quality. When Last Man Standing premiered on Fox in September 2018, it pulled in nearly 8 million viewers, almost matching its numbers from the ABC years. The audience had stuck with the show, and there was a real sense of excitement about its return. For many fans, it felt like a victory. They had spoken up, pushed back, and helped bring a canceled show back to life. But not everything about the revival was the same. During the year-long gap between seasons, some cast members had moved on. Molly Ephraim, who had played the middle daughter Mandy Baxter for 6 seasons, had taken on new projects. She had roles in shows like Brockmire and Halt and Catch Fire, and by the time Fox picked up Last Man Standing, she was no longer available to return. Instead of looking for someone who resembled Ephraim, the producers decided to go in a different direction. They cast Molly McCook in the role, knowing that she looked nothing like the previous actress. Rather than trying to downplay the change, the show acknowledged it openly and even made a few self-aware jokes about Mandy's new appearance. Initially, fans pushed back, using the hashtag #NotMyMandy to express their disappointment. But McCook took the criticism in stride and chose not to imitate her predecessor. Over time, viewers began to accept her version of Mandy, particularly as her character took on new challenges like pregnancy and building a career in fashion. Another actor whose future with the show changed was Caitlin Dever, who played the youngest daughter, Eve Baxter. After the initial cancellation, Dever had shifted her focus to film roles. She appeared in critically acclaimed projects like Detroit Booksmart and the Netflix miniseries Unbelievable, which earned her award nominations and boosted her career significantly. When Last Man Standing returned on Fox, Dever was unable to commit to being a full-time cast member. She appeared in a handful of episodes in Season 7, but had to limit her involvement due to other filming obligations. As her star continued to rise, scheduling became more complicated. The COVID-19 pandemic added even more restrictions, with each appearance requiring a 14-day quarantine. In later seasons, the show rode around her availability by having her character away at the Air Force Academy, and used video calls and special episodes to keep her connected to the story. Despite these casting adjustments, the show managed to hold on to its tone and energy. The revival wasn't just about nostalgia. It was about continuing the story in a way that reflected how families change and grow over time. The shift to Fox didn't dilute the show's message or humor. If anything, it gave the writers more room to take creative risks, knowing that the fan base had already proven its loyalty. But nothing lasts forever, and by 2020, discussions about how and when to end the show had started to take shape. In May of that year, Fox announced that Last Man Standing would conclude with its 9th season. The announcement caught some fans off guard, especially since the show was still performing well in terms of viewership. It averaged over 8 million viewers per episode, making it one of Fox's top-rated comedies. That kind of performance usually signals a show with a few more years left, but the producers and cast agreed that ending on their own terms was better than being caught off guard again by a cancellation. Behind the scenes, executive producer Kevin Abbott explained that the team had already begun planning potential storylines for a 10th season before the decision to wrap things up. One of the central ideas involved shifting the show's focus to the next generation, specifically by having Kristen Baxter, played by Amanda Fuller, take over the family business, Outdoor Man. The idea was that she would rebrand the company as Outdoor Woman, symbolizing a passing of the torch and a reflection of how family legacies can evolve with time. This would have introduced a new era for the show while honoring its original foundation. Another plan for a potential 10th season involved bringing back several recurring guest stars who had made a lasting impression on the show's audience. One name that came up often was Jonathan Taylor Thomas, who had appeared in earlier seasons as John Baker, a colleague of Mike Baxter's. Thomas was well known to fans of Home Improvement, where he played one of Tim Allen's sons. Bringing him back would have added another layer of nostalgia and given longtime viewers something special. There were also discussions about revisiting storylines tied to Richard Karn, another Home Improvement alum who had appeared as a character named Bill McKendry in Last Man Standing. As plans for the final season moved forward, Fox executives requested a big event to help the show end on a high note. At first, Kevin Abbott was hesitant. He believed the show worked best when it focused on small, intimate moments, family dinners, personal challenges, and humor rooted in everyday situations. However, one of the writers, John Haller, pitched an idea that changed everything. He suggested bringing back Tim the Toolman Taylor from Home Improvement and creating a crossover event within the world of Last Man Standing. The concept had been floated before. Over the years, the writers had toyed with the idea of creating a shared universe where the characters from Home Improvement and Last Man Standing might somehow exist together. There had even been early outlines for a Christmas special or a reunion episode that would bring back the Home Improvement cast under new circumstances. However, legal complications and studio ownership issues always stood in the way. Home Improvement was owned by Disney, while Last Man Standing was now under Fox. Getting both sides to agree on character rights and usage had proven nearly impossible in the past. This time, however, there was more urgency and more willingness to make it happen. The writers knew that the show's ending offered a unique opportunity to try something bold. They approached Disney with a detailed proposal that would allow Tim Allen to play both Mike Baxter and Tim Taylor in the same episode. while keeping each character distinct. Negotiations went back and forth for weeks, and at one point, Kevin Abbott admitted that he was prepared to move forward even without formal approval. The breakthrough came just one day before the table read, when Disney finally gave the green light. Tim Allen had a few conditions of his own. He wanted to ensure that the character of Tim Taylor was treated with respect and handled thoughtfully. Allen had a long history with the role and didn't want it reduced to a gimmick or a quick punchline. The writers agreed, and they rewrote the episode multiple times to get the tone right. They worked closely with the original Home Improvement creative team to ensure continuity, while also giving the character a fitting update. Allen even went back and watched old episodes of Home Improvement to recapture the voice, mannerisms, and mindset of Tim Taylor. The episode that finally aired included several nods to Home Improvement, including references to Wilson, the wise and often unseen neighbor, and to Tool Time, the fictional DIY show that Taylor hosted. The story explained what had happened to Tim Taylor since Home Improvement ended, offering closure for fans who had always wondered about his character's future. It was a clever and emotional blend of two TV worlds, and it became one of the most talked about episodes of the final season. The crossover wasn't just fan service, it was a creative way to honor Tim Allen's television legacy. It also reinforced the idea that Last Man Standing was never just a typical sitcom. It was a reflection of how TV families evolve, how characters grow older, and how audiences remain connected to stories across decades. For many fans, seeing Mike Baxter and Tim Taylor interact on screen was like watching two old friends catch up, two versions of the same man at different points in life, each with something to learn from the other. As the series moved toward its final episode, the production team found small ways to celebrate the show's journey. They brought back key cast members, revisited long-running jokes, and focused on giving each character a satisfying conclusion. While the COVID-19 pandemic created logistical challenges, the writers adapted. For instance, they used video calls to bring in characters who couldn't be on set, including Caitlin Dever's Eve Baxter, whose film commitments made scheduling tight. In the end, the final season maintained the tone and spirit that had defined Last Man Standing from the beginning. It didn't rely on dramatic twists or heavy-handed messages. Instead, it focused on familiar themes: parenting, generational shifts, work-life balance, and the humor that comes from everyday misunderstandings. These were the ingredients that had always made the show feel authentic. The last episode aired in May 2021, closing the door on a series that had defied the odds more than once. From surviving a surprise cancellation to being revived by another network, to overcoming casting changes and production hurdles, Last Man Standing proved that consistency, heart, and a clear voice could still succeed in modern television. It wasn't always flashy or trendy, but it stayed true to its audience, and in doing so, earned a place in the long tradition of American family sitcoms. Looking back, the show's 9-season run is more than just a television milestone. It's a case study in audience loyalty, creative flexibility, and the evolving nature of what makes a sitcom work in today's media landscape. Whether it was through thoughtful character arcs, political debates framed with humor, or a once-in-a-lifetime crossover with a 90s icon, Last Man Standing managed to connect with viewers across generations, and that in the end might be its greatest success.